Have you ever wondered what it truly means to see someone, to notice the invisible, to reach out when the world tells you to look away? Would you ever risk your place in the world just to offer a frightened child a moment of comfort, knowing it could change everything for both of you? The story I'm about to tell isn't about billionaires or sprawling estates, though those things are certainly here. It's about something much rarer, the courage to step into someone else's pain, and the unexpected ways love can echo through even the most silent corners of a broken heart. Let's start on a day when no one expected anything to change. The Vale estate sat glittering and silent on the edge of the city, all glass and marble, guarded by iron gates and ghosts of loss. Inside Preston Vale, once a whiz kid, now a billionaire tech mogul, lived surrounded by staff, luxury, and the cold ache of a house too big for one soul and a silent little boy. The world saw Preston as untouchable, a master of order and ambition. Only a handful ever saw the truth. He was terrified of his son's suffering and even more afraid of his own helplessness. On this afternoon, the polished order shattered with a child's raw, piercing cry, a sound that knifed through the marble halls and sent a chill down every spine. It was the sound of Eli, Preston's 7-year-old son, who'd lost his mother to cancer and, since then, lost his words to grief and a world that didn't know how to listen. Maya Williams was not supposed to be anywhere near that sound. Hired just 5 days ago through a temp agency, Maya was a cleaner, a nobody in the eyes of the household, with a mop and a bucket and an air of careful invisibility. But if you paid attention, you'd see she moved with an old wisdom, the kind that comes from surviving things others would never understand. She was halfway through cleaning a second-floor window when the sobs started. Maya froze, the microfiber cloth still damp in her hand. She remembered the rule. Don't go near the 5th floor. Stay clear of the upper wing. The butler's voice floated up from the stairs, full of warning. But that cry, it wasn't just a tantrum. It was panic, the kind that claws from the inside, desperate to be heard. Her whole body tensed, mind flashing back to a kitchen in Queens, to her little brother Jermaine, rocking under a table, face streaked with tears the world ignored. Maya hesitated only a moment. Some risks, she thought, are worth more than rules. She crept up the forbidden stairs, heart thudding as the sound grew louder, more urgent. At the end of the hallway, behind a cracked door flickering with blue light from a sensory projector, she found him. A small boy curled on the carpet, rocking and hitting his forehead in a desperate rhythm. No adult in sight, no comfort, just pain and repetition. She lingered at the threshold, torn between fear of losing her job and the deeper fear of failing a child in pain. "Hey, sweetheart," she whispered, her voice barely more than a breath. "I'm not going to touch you. I'm just sitting right here." He didn't answer, but his rocking slowed. Just a little. Maya kept her hands visible, palms up, the way her grandmother once taught her. She gently traced an old sign across her chest. Safe. It was a motion she hadn't used in years, but it used to help Jermaine when the world became too much. For a moment, Eli's eyes flicked to hers. The connection was brief, a glimmer of hope in a storm. Then the sound of footsteps, sharp and echoing. Preston Vale himself appeared in the doorway, tall and furious, a phone clenched in his fist. "What the hell are you doing?" he barked, eyes blazing. Maya stood quickly, muscles tense. "I heard him crying. And who gave you permission to be in this room?" "No one. I thought he might be in danger." "Step away from my son." She did, careful and slow. Preston crossed to the boy, trying to scoop him up, but Eli exploded, screaming, clawing, kicking in panic. Preston recoiled, lost, helpless. "May I?" Maya asked, barely daring to hope. He hesitated, then nodded. Maya crouched again, hands steady. "I'm right here, Eli," she whispered. The boy twisted toward her, and as if drawn by some invisible thread, collapsed into her arms. His cries faded. He gripped her sleeve and pressed his wet face into her shoulder. For the first time since his mother's death, Eli was quiet. Preston watched, speechless, every line of pride and control dissolving into something raw, something closer to gratitude or awe. Personal note here. I can't help but pause and think about this moment. How many times do people like Preston, people with everything, find themselves helpless in the face of pain that money cannot fix? And how often is the answer found in the quiet courage of someone the world never sees? As someone who's spent time in rooms like Maya's, on the margins, overlooked, I believe, empathy is a rare and radical power. Later, in the hush after the storm, Maya found herself summoned to Preston's office, a place she'd only ever dusted from the outside. The room was all dark wood, glass, and intimidating silence. Preston sat across from her, tapping a pen against a legal pad, eyes searching for something he couldn't name. "You handled him like someone who'd done it 100 times," he said finally. "I haven't. Not with him, but with my brother, Germain. He passed 4 years ago." Preston's face softened, just a fraction. "I'm sorry. Thank you." He leaned back, rubbing his temples. "No therapist has been able to calm Eli like that. Not in 2 years. And you just walked in with a rag in your hand, and it worked." Maya swallowed. "I didn't fix him, sir. I just saw him." Those words stopped him cold. "Children like Eli," she continued quietly, "they don't need to be fixed. They need to be heard. You can't rush their silence. You have to be willing to sit in it with them." Preston was silent a long time. When he spoke again, his voice was different, less certain, more hopeful. "What's your name?" "Maya. Maya Williams. I clean the East Wing." "You're not a therapist?" "No, sir. Just a cleaner." He looked at her for a long moment. "Can you stay a little longer today?" "Yes, sir," Maya replied, heart pounding. That night, after Eli finally slept, Maya walked the echoing halls thinking of her grandmother's advice. If God opens a door, don't stand there arguing about the knob. She knew she had crossed a line, but she also knew she couldn't regret it. As the days unfolded, Maya's role changed in subtle ways. She was still the maid, still the outsider. But now, when Eli's meltdowns came, she was the one they called. Each time she responded not with words or clever tricks, but with patience, presence, and the old signs of safety. Slowly, Eli began to trust her, following her with his eyes, then with small, hesitant gestures. He didn't speak, but he smiled. He reached for her hand. Preston watched all of this with a mixture of envy and relief. Here was this woman, someone he'd never have noticed before, doing what teams of experts and mountains of money could not. Reaching his son, pulling him back into the world one gentle moment at a time. But not everyone in the mansion approved. Whispers spread, questions about Maya's place, about her past, about whether a maid had any business caring for a billionaire's son. The old housekeeper, Mrs. Green, cornered her one morning, eyes narrowed. "Don't get too comfortable, dear. Mr. Vale's moods change like the wind." Maya only smiled. "I'm not here to be comfortable. I'm here for Eli." One afternoon, Preston called Maya to his office again. He didn't bother with pretense this time. "I want to make you an offer," he said, eyes steady. "I need someone Eli trusts. I'll double your pay. You'll have your own room, all expenses covered. You'll never lift a mop again." Maya hesitated, thinking of her grandmother's medical bills, of the rent overdue, of the loneliness that sometimes kept her awake at night. She also thought of Eli, of the quiet trust growing between them. "I'll try," she said at last. That night, Maya called her grandmother, voice trembling. "I think I just said yes to something that could change everything." "Baby," her grandmother replied, "sometimes what changes the world isn't big. It's just showing up and loving who no one else will." Reflecting on this chapter, I see a truth I wish more people would recognize. Sometimes the most radical act of all is choosing to care when the world tells you to turn away. It's not easy. It costs something. But it can start a chain reaction no amount of power or money can stop. If this part of Maya and Preston's story moved you, let me know where you're watching from, or tell me your own story in the comments. In the next part, you'll see how Maya's presence turns the entire Vale mansion upside down, exposing secrets, shifting loyalties, and bringing a father and son closer than they ever dreamed possible. Change rarely comes like thunder. More often, it seeps into the cracks of ordinary days, quietly unraveling what's been held tight for too long. For Maya, the rhythm of her new life in the Vale mansion was both a blessing and a burden. She'd traded the hard edges of poverty and uncertainty for corridors lined with Persian rugs, but luxury couldn't silence her doubts. Did she truly belong here? Or was she just another helper, waiting for the world to remind her of her place? Yet every morning, as sunlight streamed through the east-facing windows, she found her answer in Eli's silent trust. He waited for her, sitting cross-legged by his sensory mat, hands busy with puzzles and colored blocks. They had developed a wordless language, glances, gentle nods, a quiet hum she sang under her breath. If you looked closely, you'd see the edges of trauma receding, replaced by cautious curiosity. On her sixth day, Maya brought a small whiteboard and markers into the nursery. "Let's try something new, sweetheart," she whispered, drawing a simple sun and a crooked heart. Eli watched, expressionless, but when she handed him the marker, he hesitated, then scribbled a lopsided star. It wasn't speech, but it was communication, a bridge across the silence. From the hallway, Preston often watched. At first, he hovered in the shadows, arms folded, a mixture of pride and discomfort etched across his features. His presence in these moments was careful, as if he feared breaking the fragile peace Maya was building with his son. One day, Preston approached Maya after watching her calm Eli through a particularly tough meltdown. "He's different with you," he admitted, voice lower, stripped of arrogance. "Quieter, more here." Maya nodded, glancing at Eli. "He just needs consistency, not magic. Someone to sit in the quiet with him and not rush to fill it." Preston was silent, hands jammed into his pockets. "Emma used to say that. My wife. She was the only one who could get him to laugh." His words trailed off, thick with memory. Maya offered a gentle smile. "He remembers her, you know, even if he doesn't say it. Grief isn't linear for anyone, especially not kids." Preston's face broke, just a little. "Do you think he'll ever talk again?" "I think he's already talking," Maya replied. "Just not the way you expect. Sometimes the world's too loud, so you have to listen with your heart. There are moments in every story when everything shifts. For Preston, it happened one Saturday morning as he watched Maya and Eli play with modeling clay on the sunroom floor. Preston joined them, awkward at first, hands clumsy as he tried to mimic Maya's gentle gestures. Eli watched his father, curiosity flickering in his eyes, then handed him a lump of blue clay. Preston smiled, gratitude tightening his throat. "I feel like I'm learning to be his father for the first time," Preston confessed later, as Maya tidied up the playroom. "You are," Maya said softly. "Sometimes love looks like trying again, even when you're afraid." A few days later, a storm brewed outside, rattling the windows and making the lights flicker. Eli grew restless, the tension in the air winding him tighter. He began to rock, hands pressed to his ears, whimpering in distress. Preston panicked, unsure, but Maya knelt beside the boy and hummed a slow gospel melody, the same one she'd sung to her brother in dark apartments back in Queens. Slowly, Eli stilled, then leaned into her, his head against her shoulder. Preston knelt beside them, his hands shaking as he reached out, finally resting gently on Eli's back. The next morning, Preston invited Maya to join him for coffee in the garden. The air was heavy with the scent of blooming camellias, and for the first time, their conversation drifted beyond Eli, beyond roles and boundaries. "You know," Preston began, tracing circles on his mug, "before Emma died, I thought I had everything under control. My company, my future, even my grief. But after she was gone, I realized I was just running from it all. I buried myself in work, thinking I could buy my way out of pain." Maya listened, her gaze gentle. "We all run from something, but you can't outrun grief. You just learn to carry it." He looked up, vulnerability exposed. "How did you survive losing your brother?" "I didn't," Maya admitted. "Not at first. But then I realized every act of kindness I showed another hurting soul was a way of keeping him alive. That's why I'm here, Preston. Not for the money, for the chance to mean something, even for a little while." He nodded, understanding finally dawning. "You mean more than you know." From that day, their relationship shifted. Preston no longer kept Maya at arm's length. He asked her advice, confided in her about Eli's struggles, and even began to join their daily rituals. One afternoon, he asked Maya to teach him some basic sign language. just enough to let Eli know he was trying. Eli watched wide-eyed as his father clumsily signed more in love. The boy responded with a shaky version of the same signs, and Preston's eyes filled with tears he didn't bother to hide. Maya reflected on these moments in her battered journal at night. Maybe healing is just a series of small braveries. Maybe family is built one choice at a time, by those willing to show up day after day, no matter how imperfectly. But the outside world had other ideas. As Maya became a fixture in Eli's life, rumors started among the staff and, inevitably, beyond. Whispers that the billionaire was getting too close to the help reached Preston's business associates. A former assistant, jealous and spiteful, began leaking stories to the press about Maya's past and her suspiciously rapid rise from maid to caretaker. The first time Maya saw her name in an online article, her photo beside a headline that called her a gold digger with a tragic story, she nearly quit. That night, as rain battered her window, she packed a small bag and sat on the edge of her bed, sobbing quietly. But then came a soft knock at her door. Eli, pajama-clad and sleepy-eyed, stood there clutching his stuffed bear. He signed stay, then, as if searching for a new word, pressed his palm to his chest, a gesture Maya had taught him meant safe. In that moment, Maya understood. Her place wasn't defined by the world's opinions. It was defined by the trust she'd built with a boy who once recoiled from every touch, and by the father learning, step by halting step, to love bravely. The next day, Maya faced the household staff and the world with her chin held high. She smiled at Mrs. Green, thanked the security guard by name, and showed up for Eli with even more patience than before. If anyone had a problem with her presence, they'd have to answer to both her and Preston now. One evening, as the family gathered around a simple dinner, Preston raised a toast. "To new beginnings," he said, looking first at Maya, then at Eli, "and to the courage it takes to heal." Maya met his gaze, tears pricking her eyes, and lifted her glass. "To showing up, even when it's hard." After dinner, she stepped outside to the garden, breathing in the cool night air. The moon hung low, painting the flowers silver. For the first time in a long while, Maya felt hope take root, not as a wild fantasy, but as a quiet certainty. No matter what storms might come, she had found a place to belong and a reason to stay. Personal reflection. Watching Maya's journey, I'm reminded that real change often begins quietly, in the shadows of doubt and uncertainty. It doesn't always roar into the world. Sometimes it arrives on tiptoe, with gentle hands and a willingness to be present in someone else's suffering. Maya's courage wasn't loud, but it was transformative. And that's the kind of story that sticks with me. If you've ever felt like an outsider or wondered if small kindnesses could really change a life, I hope you see yourself in Maya's story. Let me know in the comments how you define family, or share a moment when someone's quiet bravery made all the difference. Stay tuned, because in the next chapter, the Vale Mansion faces a storm no one could have predicted. Loyalties are tested, secrets are revealed, and Maya's place in this family is threatened as she fights for Eli in ways no one expects. No storm is ever just about the rain. Sometimes it's about what the rain reveals. Cracks that were always there, only now they're too wide to ignore. The weeks after the first wave of gossip about Maya were strangely quiet, as if the house itself was holding its breath. Preston poured himself into work, only returning home for Eli's bedtime. Maya kept her routine, but something had shifted. She no longer walked the halls invisible. Staff began to greet her with cautious respect. Some even smiled. But in the spaces between kindness, the tension grew. She felt it in the glances from the estate manager, in the polite questions from Preston's business partners at dinner, in the endless articles online dissecting her motives. One morning, as Maya and Eli sat on the sunlit floor piecing together a wooden puzzle, a knock echoed through the house, a hard, official-sounding rap. Preston answered the door, his face tightening as he saw two child welfare agents on the porch. "We're responding to a report," said the taller one, clipboard in hand. "A concern about Mr. Caldwell's son." The air seemed to vanish from the room. Maya felt Eli's hand slip into hers, the small fingers squeezing tight. She recognized the look in Preston's eyes, panic edged with fury. "We're happy to answer any questions," Preston replied, voice steady but cold. But my son is safe. The agents inspected the house, asking pointed questions about Maya's qualifications, her background, even the way she spoke to Eli. Through it all, Maya held her head high. When they asked to speak to Eli alone, she gently signed to him, reassuring, letting him know he wasn't in trouble. After a tense hour, the agents apologized and left. This visit was protocol, one admitted quietly. Your son is well cared for. Sometimes people call us for other reasons. Preston's jaw worked in anger. I'll handle this, he muttered, and made a string of phone calls. That afternoon, his lawyer arrived, followed by Lionel, the security chief. They traced the welfare report to a recently fired assistant now working for a rival tech firm. Lark Technologies, the company that had been battling Caldwell Dynamics for months over a billion-dollar merger. It's not just corporate sabotage, Lionel said. It's personal. Maya watched Preston's world tighten into a fist, one hand gripping Eli, the other poised to strike at his enemies. But she knew all too well that the wounds in this house ran deeper than any business feud. That night, she found Eli asleep in his bed, clutching the bear she'd mended for him. She watched him breathe and whispered a promise. No one will take you from me, not ever. As the days unfolded, the scandal erupted online. Tabloids labeled Maya everything from a hero to a manipulator. Anonymous messages pinged her phone at all hours, some supportive, many cruel. You don't belong, one read. Another, he'll see what you are. Maya deleted them but couldn't shake their sting. Preston tried to shield her. He issued press statements, held her hand in public. But the whispers grew, and then the lawsuit came. Lark Technologies accused Caldwell of coercive business practices and cited Maya's presence as a conflict of interest, suggesting she'd influenced Preston for personal gain. Court day dawned cold and gray. Reporters packed the steps, flashes popping as Maya walked in beside Preston and Eli. She wore her best dress, modest, clean, with a brooch that had belonged to her grandmother. Inside, the courtroom was a war zone of legal jargon and quiet devastation. Maya was called to testify. The opposing lawyer smirked. Why would a maid take it upon herself to intervene in matters beyond her duty? Maya lifted her chin. Because I know what it feels like to be forgotten. I promised myself that if I ever saw a child in need, I wouldn't look away. Preston watched, pride and fear battling across his face. Eli sat in the back, flanked by his therapist and Mrs. Green, holding his bear, wide-eyed but silent. When the verdict came, it was like the first clear sky after weeks of rain. The judge's words cut through the noise. Miss Williams' actions reflect the highest standard of care. This court recognizes her as a protector, not a liability. Outside, the world exploded in a new kind of frenzy. Reporters pushed forward, desperate for comment. This time, Maya didn't shrink. She answered softly, I didn't do this for praise. I did it because every child deserves someone who won't leave, even when things get hard. That night, the house was quiet. The storm had passed, but everything was changed. Preston found Maya sitting in the garden, tears streaming down her face. Not of fear, but release. He sat beside her, their shoulders touching in the darkness. You never have to prove yourself to me, he whispered. You've given us more than I ever thought possible. Not just to Eli, to me too. Maya smiled through tears. I'm not perfect, Preston. I have scars you'll never see. But I'm here, and I'm not leaving. He reached for her hand. I know what love is supposed to look like now. It's not grand gestures. It's staying when the world says run. Days turned to weeks. Eli's progress astonished even his therapist. He signed more words, smiled more often, and, on a golden afternoon, spoke again. Just one word. Mama. The first time, Maya almost missed it. The second time, she fell to her knees, gathering him into her arms. Family is not always chosen by blood. Sometimes it's made by those willing to sit in the quiet, hold hands through the storm, and stand when everyone else flees. In the months that followed, Maya was invited to join the state's Child Welfare Advisory Board, using her experience to change policies for kids like Eli. She visited community centers, told her story on small stages, and helped build programs for children who spoke in their own beautiful silent languages. But her truest victories happened in the sunlit rooms of the mansion, in the quiet trust of a boy who learned to love again, and a man who let himself hope. If you've made it this far, ask yourself, who was the person who stayed when you needed it most? Or, when did you decide to be that person for someone else? Tell us your story. The world needs more Mayas, more Prestons, more Elis. My own reflection. Sometimes the greatest act of courage isn't fighting dragons. It's being present in someone's darkness, refusing to turn away. Maya's journey reminds me that justice isn't always loud. Sometimes it's just showing up, again and again, with a heart wide open. The ending may not be a fairy tale, but it's real. It's earned. And that, to me, is the most powerful kind of happy ending. If this story touched you, share it, comment your thoughts, and let's make the world a little warmer, one act of kindness at a time.